Patreon is the gold standard for Royal Road authors monetizing their fiction, with top earners making $10,000 to $40,000 a month. For context, the median full-time author, independent or traditionally published, makes approximately $20,000 to $25,000 a year. But is Patreon's platform the right fit? Does it provide a good reading experience? How about fees? And most importantly, are there better alternatives available for authors? First off, how are authors on Royal Road using Patreon? The general idea is you get readers hooked on your series and then offer advanced chapters through a subscription. At the top of the pyramid, this can be very lucrative. And like many of you, those potential earnings are what attracted me to Royal Road in the first place. But I can't stress this enough. The authors earning $10,000 to $40,000 a month are the exception, not the rule. Let's take a look at some of the actual numbers as of last year. This article has a great summary. The top 50 authors average $3,800 a month, which is excellent, once again surpassing the income of the median full-time author. The conversion rate of followers to Patreon is 1.5 to 4% of active readers. That last bit is super important. I'll expand upon this later, but the most successful pricing seems to be $5 to $10. Much like with Royal Road in general, quantity is important. Authors who post 5 chapters a week earn more than those who post 2 to 3. And while the ceiling of income is higher on Royal Road than web novel, the floor is also lower. As this article points out, Royal Road doesn't pay you anything. Patreon, ebooks, and audiobooks are how authors make money. Because the key demographic of Royal Road are binge readers, paying a subscription fee to access advanced chapters matches their behavior. Here's a more detailed breakdown of earnings, and this is after Patreon's 8 to 12% fee. As mentioned earlier, top 10 is $10,000 to $40,000. 11 to 25 is $4,000 to $9,000, 26 to 50 is $1,800 to $4,000, 51 to 200 is $400 to $1,800, and ranks 200 plus are typically under $300 a month. The only real exception is when the superstars of the platform are active, they can earn 6 figures a month. But as you can see with a more typical distribution, there's a steep fall off. Even earning $300 a month is a huge success story. To turn this into a math problem, if you have 10,000 followers on Royal Road, which I don't and very few do, around 30 to 40% will be active, so 3,000 to 4,000. Of those active readers, 1.5 to 4% will convert to your Patreon. That means 45 to 160 patrons. If the average pledge is $6 to $8 a month, that's $270 to $1,280 a month. This data is a little old, so take it with a grain of salt, but less than 0.69% of Royal Road stories have more than 3,000 followers. So again, I think you need to be reasonable with your expectations. Achieving 10,000 followers is exceptionally rare. Offering a tier system seems to be the most effective way to monetize on Patreon. And some trends start to emerge. 65 to 75% of income comes from the cheapest advanced chapter tier, which is generally priced around $5. 15 to 20% is from the mid-tier of $10. This one offers even more chapters or weekly bonus content. Authors earn 5 to 10% from premium tiers, $25 and up. These often involve Discord access, getting your name in the book, things of that nature. And finally, only 3 to 5% comes from one-time supporters in the highest Patreon tier. The key takeaway from this is you want a sustained subscriber base, and you should focus on optimizing that $5 tier. Everything else is kind of window dressing. The main reason stories release 5 times a week as opposed to 2 or 3 is because the binge reader hits cliffhangers more often. So if you can sustainably write 12,000 words a week, you can operate under this system. I don't think I could do that. I'm happy when I'm hitting 3,600 words a week. Nearly quadrupling my output would probably lead to burnout. I'm not going to spend much time contrasting web novel to Royal Road, but if you're going with web novel, I really recommend that you take a hard look at their contract. I think it's predatory. I have a video all about that. Before we get into the next article, I think this is a good time to check in on why I don't have a Patreon. If only 1.5 to 4% of active followers are going to convert to your Patreon, where does that leave me? With about 1.5 potential patrons. For me, there's also the issue of advanced chapters. I'm about 12 chapters ahead of my release schedule, which is a pretty ample offering, but I like having the security of being able to fall back upon that buffer. I'm also not comfortable releasing unedited chapters. If you're offering, say, 30 advanced chapters, I think that's inevitable. And finally, I only release 2 chapters a week. That's what's sustainable for me, but that will put me at a huge disadvantage when it comes to Patreon subscribers. I think there's an argument to be made that some of you lovely YouTube subscribers might join my Patreon. So I am tempted. And maybe I should have had a Patreon up this entire time. I'm just much more focused on getting my trilogy done, doing a huge editing pass to prep the ebooks, and then recording audiobooks. That said, maybe I'm leaving money on the table by not connecting a Patreon, which to their credit is something that Royal Road makes very easy. You can add a PayPal link or a Patreon. It then shows up right on your fiction's page. Now that I've expressed some of my reservations about why I don't have a Patreon, what are some guidelines for other authors? This article breaks down all the details very effectively. The Chapter Chronicles team analyzed 750 Royal Road stories to get this data. They found that 72% of successful Royal Road stories had a Patreon. But when should you launch it? Out of newer authors, they found 35 who were running Patreons with fewer than 2,000 followers. So I agree that launching a Patreon with a couple hundred followers probably makes sense. The median seems to be about 3,400, but I wouldn't wait until that point, as more than half of stories with 500 or less followers have a Patreon. 1,000 to 2,000 followers seems to be the sweet spot, and if you haven't done it by the time you have 5,000 followers, you've waited way too long. I should probably take this bit to heart. There isn't really a downside to trying to monetize too early. I think I would just feel embarrassed if I had next to no subscribers, but come on man, get over that. The article recommends this tier structure. $1 to $3 for a support tier. You get a thank you and Discord access, but no advanced chapters. $5 for 5 to 10 advanced chapters, and a premium tier of $10 to $15 for 15 to 20 advanced chapters, plus bonuses. Nearly 40% of authors have a 3-tier system. There's no need to complicate that. 41% only have 1 or 2 tiers, which means that anyone who has more than 5 tiers are outliers. Now that we've got our tiers down, what's the ideal amount of advanced chapters? I like how they emphasize that as an author, you need to understand what you're capable of. Don't burn yourself out. They recommend 6, and I'll assume that those chapters are at least 1,500 words. That's enough of a chunk to feel valuable, it's maintainable, which I can't emphasize enough, and it's enough of a runway that you can take a break. Personally, I think if I was doing 6 advanced chapters, I'd have another 6 already in the can, or at least rough drafts. Part of my reluctance to embrace this model is I'm much more focused on writing as opposed to editing. I've gotten into the bad habit of editing the chapter the day I'm releasing it. Don't be like me, do better. If you don't know what to charge, the median patron's pay is about $2 per advanced chapter. So 6 chapters for $10 is in line with that. Going below 5 advanced chapters is not recommended. Once again, 6 is the median, and you're going to want to offer 10 plus for a premium tier. This article has a much higher conversion rate to patrons than the other one. I think it's a bit inflated. 7 to 20% of your followers becoming patrons seems very high. But as they acknowledge, there are a ton of variables, which might make that calculation difficult. So based on their math, with 1,000 followers, you might hit $650 a month on Patreon. At 5,000 followers, you could expect $3,250. I could be wrong, but I would temper that expectation and be a bit more conservative. Lastly, this article tackles a topic I see popping up a lot. Patreon is a very clunky interface for serialized fiction. You're sharing ebooks, PDFs, and chapter links. There's no way to organize the chapters, and reading progress isn't saved. At its core, it's a payment processor. That lack of functionality becomes a greater problem for enthusiastic binge readers, your core demographic. Only the most dedicated fans are going to put up with that, and it's difficult on Patreon to reward them for that effort. It's not like the Patreon brand is what's drawing people to your fiction, you're sending them to that platform. It just happens to be the default payment platform that authors use. Royal Road integrating it directly reinforces that. So when you're seeing complaints about Patreon trying to turn itself into Instagram, or plenty of hate about the Patreon reading experience, why do authors still use it? Are there better alternatives? Let's take a look. Ream is one direct competitor, essentially trying to offer a platform that solves these problems for authors. They even offer up a nice chart comparing features. But remember, this is from Ream's perspective, so they're going to make themselves look extra good. They charge a 10% fee for their platform, which is pretty standard. That's what Patreon charges as well. One exception is that Apple charges 30% when you make purchases within the Patreon app. You can also monetize on Wattpad, but they take 20%, so I don't think that's a good option. But Ream is offering a lot of nice features. You can do subscriptions, direct sales, offer up print copies, audiobooks, comics. Unlike Patreon, there's greater discoverability, access to analytics, and better support for serialized fiction. Taking a look at Ream's offered fantasy, there seems to be a heavy romance bent to it. And at least 3 years ago, users were asking for direct links from Royal Road to Ream, and nothing's happened with that. Allegedly, Royal Road is also coming out with their own internal monetization system. I'm a little skeptical. Reading about Quibble's monetization policy made it clear how complicated international transactions can be. And even more of a barrier is how seamless it is to connect your Patreon to your Royal Road page. You could include payment links in your chapter author notes, but it's against Royal Road policy to include them in your blurb or your author profile. In terms of Patreon competitors, Ream seems to be the most specialized towards serialized authors. But there are plenty of other options like Mighty Networks, Kit, Kajabi, but I'm only going to focus on a few of them, like Buy Me a Coffee, which has a tantalizing 5% fee, and Ko-fi. Ko-fi? I'm going to go with Ko-fi over Ko-fi, and Coffee doesn't seem right either. Buy Me a Coffee seems to be set up more as a tip jar, a way to reward a creator you like. Perhaps me? It's basically a simpler version of Patreon that can handle one-time payments or subscriptions, but unfortunately, it also lacks a meaningful way to engage with your community. So really, the only upside is that 5% transaction fee compared to Patreon's 10%. About that, Buy Me a Coffee may only charge you 5%, but there's a transaction processing fee. They have a partnership with Stripe, which Quibble does as well, and Stripe charges 2.9% plus 30 cents per transaction, plus a 0.5% fee, plus 1% if it's international, and plus 0.5% for subscriptions. So in some instances, they're taking more than Patreon. And given that it's harder to link directly on Royal Road, there's really no reason to use it. How about Ko-fi? It also originated as more of a tip jar than a subscription model, but is adapted. You also have a bit more organizational capacity, which is something that Patreon lacks. You get paid per transaction immediately. You don't have to wait for monthly lump sums, which is great. For tips, there's no platform fee on Ko-fi, but unfortunately, to access subscription features, a 5% fee is added, including to tips. And the platform uses Stripe or PayPal to process payments, which, as we saw with Buy Me a Coffee, add their own fees, which is disappointing because I was really leaning towards recommending Ko-fi. So ultimately, I think Ream is really the only competition for Patreon in this author space. But you still have that major obstacle of not having a direct link on your Royal Road page as Patreon does. And given that Royal Road seems to be integrating their own monetization system, I don't think they're inclined to make life any easier for Ream. Which is a shame because the status quo seems to be a pretty poor experience for readers. And the key things to look out for are, is Patreon becoming enshittified? Does Royal Road integrate their own system? Or do they make it easier to connect to a third party? Until then, I think you gotta kinda grin and bear it. Patreon, despite its flaws, seems like the best option. Which gives me a lot to think about. Namely, should I start my own Patreon? Or should I have had one this entire time? That's a nice seg into how is my fiction doing? I'm maintaining steady growth. Followers are up a bit, so is average views, and I broke 20,000 total views, which feels like a great benchmark. My ad campaign ran its course, so it might be time to start another one. I'd love to see my follower count get up to 250, and then ideally start to snowball. My priority is ultimately ebook and audiobook releases, but it'd be encouraging to see some more growth as my trilogy comes to a conclusion on Royal Road. I'd like to shout out Gembound by Taliorn, Traps, Tricks, and Beasts by Grace B. Morgan, and Barely Surviving the Zombie Apocalypse with My Sentient Robot by Shower Krogan. Also, Hail Wartone. That's it for this video. TMB and I will see you soon. Look at those legs.